What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to this episode. Welcome back to my guitar repair bench. Today we got a good one. Broken neck repair. Stay tuned. So thanks for tuning into this episode, guys. Today we are working on this Fender acoustic guitar that the owner somehow fell on, and well, you can see the aftermath. Now, this is not a high-end model, and for that actually I'm kind of thankful, because I'm not sure how this is going to work. I've got an idea of how we're going to pull this off, and I think it's going to be okay, but just so you know, it is a Fender acoustic guitar model number FA-135CE. It's a fairly inexpensive model. It's got a plywood top. Nothing fancy at all, but let's see if we can put this back together and make it playable once again. So I'm going to bring you in a little bit closer. You can see right away that this is definitely a plywood top. It's not a solid wood instrument. I think what I want to start with, I know I should probably leave those little splinters in place, but they are bent and not allowing the neck to fit back in place properly. So I believe I'm going to go in and I'm going to remove those little chipped bits. The rest of this is fairly solid. And if they were big chunks, I would definitely try to glue those back down. Right now, I just want to make sure that everything underneath here is solid. Also, down here in the neck pocket area, there are some loose bits. I know you can't really see it, but I'm just going to try to get the loose stuff out of there without really removing any large pieces. Anything that's already loose, I'm not going to put back in. For this repair, say there are applications where you would want to save all of those little pieces. I'm just not concerned with this guy. I'm also going to examine the underside of the neck as well. I don't know if that's the finish that's broken right there. Well, that is a chunk. I think we're going to glue that little chunk back in first. I'm going to start out with addressing some of the issues on the neck. Now, when this broke, it did separate part of the fretboard from up underneath here. I need to get some glue. See that opening up? I need to get some glue down in there. Now, an easy way to do that would be to use some thin CA glue, but I'm all out of thin CA glue, so I have here some Titebond wood glue that I have thinned out with water. Hopefully I can get it to run down in those cracks. Let's see what happens. I've got the neck clamped to the side of my bench just to kind of hold it upright. I need a little brush. Hold please while I find a brush. Whoosh. Glue brush. Now I'm just going to take my gluey, soupy mixture and try to get that to run down in those cracks. Oh yeah, it's running down in, at least on this side. Yeah. You go down there, glue. Oh, get down in there. Glue. Ah, guess I should have taped that off. Well, we'll wipe it up. It's fine. It's fine. That's running out the side. Perfect right there. I know it's down in the crack. Oh, beautiful. This is perfect. Come on, out the crack. Out the... Yeah! There you go. Nice. Okay. Now I'm going to clamp that with a couple of clamps. I've got these little clamping blocks that are a piece of hardwood with some thick cork glued on there. I'm going to use it as a backer just to help distribute some clamping pressure to try to avoid any sort of weird humps in the fretboard. When I glued my busted classical years ago, I didn't really worry too much about that, and I got some weird humps in there, so I could probably use a good fret level and refret, and it's a mess. But this one I'm trying to avoid. Keep it as flat as possible. Let that glue dry. Alright, the glue is set up on that. Let's remove this neck. Got a little cleanup to do there, but that's okay. We'll polish that out when we're done. It's a little better. I can tell that's a little more solid in there. I still see a little bit of flex up here at the end, but I think once we get that clamped and glued in place, it's a little better. Let's move on and see if we can get this put back on. Man, these fret edges are terrible. Yeah, let's get it together first. We'll take care of that later with the setup. Now, let's work on getting this thing to fit together really good, or as good as we can. This top fits pretty good. I think there's still a few little bits somewhere that's keeping this neck joint from fitting down in there the way I would like it to. Another option would probably be to try to steam this glue joint, remove this broken piece of the heel, reattach it, and then reattach the whole thing. The problem I see with that is that the truss rod fits through a hole right here. You see where that's coming out? There's a hole. So you have to put it down in and then it slides back. And in order to do that, I would almost have to glue the neck in place without the truss rod, then reinstall the truss rod and then the fretboard. That's a little more than I want to try to do for this particular instrument. So we're just going to work on getting this thing to fit as nice as we can. We'll have a little touch up to do on the finish, but overall it should be fine. So now I'm just kind of mocking it up. Seems like it's actually going to fit together pretty good. I can see the crack, but I don't see any gaps. I can feel it. Well, right on the side I can't feel it. I can feel it a little bit at the front. I'm guessing maybe the wood kind of got bent and misshapen a little. On the sides, especially this side, it's almost completely flush. We're going to glue it. I'm going to first moisten the top with some of this diluted wood glue. I'm going to let that kind of set up just for a little bit. This will help glue down any of those fibers. Kind of like pre-gluing if you're gluing an end grain. You add a little bit of wood glue to the end. Soaks up that glue at first, then when you actually glue it, it doesn't soak it all up and you get a better glue joint. While I'm waiting for that glue to dry, I decided to run my fret file down along the edge. It's going to be a lot easier to get to it now than if I try to do it later. This is just to clean up the edges because these edges are really bad. So that watered down glue that I applied to these slivers, it's dry. I don't feel anything sticking up. Everything feels like it's pretty solid for what it is. I think we're ready to get some actual glue on here, clamp this thing up, and keep our fingers crossed. Now it's gonna work fine. I feel pretty good. It feels like it fits really nice, and I'm pretty confident this is gonna work out just fine. We'll start out just by brushing everything down again, just to make sure that I have all the dust, any chips, all the chips and anything loose is out of there. And I'm starting with a nice clean joint, even though it's kind of raggedy in spots. I think it's nice and clean. Everything seems to fit together really well. I don't use a glue brush much, but this time I am, because I want to ensure that this thing is together. And I've got glue down in all of the pores. Normally I would just wipe it in with my finger, but not this time. I'm using tight bond wood glue for this because it is removable with heat. If something goes absolutely horribly wrong, I could heat this up and hopefully take it back apart if I needed to. All right, we're in there. I'm gonna install the 2 outer E strings. I'll use this for alignment when I'm clamping things in place. For clamping calls, I've got these pieces of hardwood with cork glued to it. I'm gonna use that. That way I can get a lot of pressure on the fretboard, but it won't mar the finish. I'll use that on the top and the bottom, and where I need to, I'll use these other pieces of cork. Oh, that's tricky. Sorry, I just kicked you. Didn't mean to kick you. There we go. That feels good. Sides there. Oh yeah, that looks really good. Got a little bit of glue squeeze out. Oh man, I think this is gonna work well. We got some squeeze out going on. I'm feeling good. I am feeling good. Pull the bridge clamp back out so I can get a little bigger clamp in there. Crank her down. Oh yeah, there we go. Now we're getting somewhere. I'm gonna let that sit. I'm feeling pretty good. I feel like the glue joint went together really well. I got some nice squeeze out around the edges. I feel like there was plenty of glue coverage in there. I'm gonna let this sit for a little while, then I'll wipe the squeeze out away to make sure the joints are nice and clean. I don't want that glue to harden, and I have to scrape that off later. And then I'm gonna let this thing sit for at least an entire day in the clamps. I'm not gonna touch it, barely even gonna look at it, and we'll come back and unclamp it tomorrow. Well, it has been 2 days. I decided to let this sit for an extra day just to make sure all the glue was 100% cured, as much as it can possibly be. Let's unclamp this. Name that song. Let's put a straight edge on this dude. See what we have. Pretty straight. If anything, it's got some back bow in it that hopefully we can adjust out with the truss rod. No, it's not in this area, it's down here. So it's got to be the truss rod. It's right here. We should be able to adjust that out with the truss rod. I believe this is okay for me to move on and do a little bit of patching up on the finish and get it cleaned up and put back together. I'm just going to drop fill some super glue along a few of the cracks that I can feel. I'm going to let it dry naturally before sanding it down. Once the glue is dry, I'm going to start with some 1000 grit sandpaper and sand it down to 2000 just to make sure it's nice and smooth. Then I'll mask everything off and get it ready to respray the lacquer. After I finish sanding it, I just masked off the areas that I don't want any spray on, because now I need to touch up the finish right here. Somehow I forgot to record taping it off. Nothing fancy. Scrapped some scrap newspapers, taped it off. Now I'm going to touch up right here where I sanded through the finish. I'm going to try and see if I can make that blend a little bit better. Just got some black dye here. This is a Craftnique dye put out by the Crystal company. These are some samples that they sent me to try out. So I'm going to see if I can take some of this dye, apply it right over here. We'll sand that just a little bit smooth, just to try to blend everything in, and then we're going to shoot it with a couple cans of lacquer? No, a couple coats of lacquer, and blend everything in with some polish. We'll be done. I'm just going to put a little bit of the dye on a Q-tip, and we're going to see how this works. Now normally this is not what you do with this dye. This dye typically gets mixed into a base, but we're just going to see what happens here. We're learning together. This has got to be the worst tape. Wow, that actually looks pretty darn good. I'm impressed. Huh. I like it. Dave, it's a good application for this stuff. Yeah. It is not going to be invisible, but it is a whole lot better than it was. I'm going to put a little bit more tape on there. I don't really need to respray that far up the neck. So I'm going to back tape this because I don't want a hard line there. Look at some flowers blowing around in my yard while I wait for this stuff to dry so we can blend it in. After removing the masking, I'm going to wet sand the lacquer with some 2000 grit sandpaper. This will help me be able to blend in any lines left from the tape. Then I'll polish the repaired area with some Meguiar's Ultimate Polish. I'm going to do it by hand. This takes a little bit of time and is a little bit of work, but you have a lot more control than trying to polish an area like this with a machine. It's pretty tiring. I'm really happy with the way that's looking.
The basic thing we need to do right now is file it down.
Yep, probably see right here, these frets are a mess. So we're going to clean them up. You can kind of see a little bit of a mark right there, but they all have flaws in them. And this thing is not even very old. So we're going to do a little bit of fret cleanup and get these things shined up and in good shape. I can see lines in these frets where it was leveled, but never really sanded off after that. I almost don't think they even recrowned them. So I'm going to change my plan of attack, and I am going to recrown these. Basically going to do a whole entire fret job. I didn't really want to have to do this, but I think it's the right thing to do.
What are you doing that for? You're going to try to shave it off.
Yep, we're going to file it down, and this is so you can see it when we go to filing. We're going to make sure that these frets are in good shape.
So, file it down. Who's in a red marker? Where do you keep that marker? You just keep it thrown over there. Let us know in the comments, guys, if you think I should file in guitar videos or Daddy should file. Write it in the comments down below. And it's not the end of the video yet.
After I have all the frets crowned, I'll start the polishing process by using a 220 grit abrasive eraser, followed up by a succession of grits of sandpaper, starting from about 600 and working up to 2000. Now I've got these frets sanded down to 2000 grit. I'm going to use my Dremel with a buffing wheel on there, and we'll polish these things up to a nice shine. For those of you that may be wondering, I'm using some red polishing compound. It works pretty quick. You don't need to spend a lot of time on the frets. In fact, if you spend too much time, the frets can get really hot. I like to make 2 passes across the frets down the fretboard, and then I make another 2 passes across each fret working the opposite direction. By splitting it up, I can avoid heating the fret too much. Now I can untape everything and address the fingerboard. I'm going to go ahead and condition this fingerboard. It feels really dry. Actually, at first, I kind of thought it was plastic, I believe because it's so dry. But I looked it up, and it does say that it's rosewood, although this is the roughest rosewood fretboard I have ever felt. We'll put a little bit of conditioner on there, hopefully bring it back to life. Normally, I like to use this Stumac lemon oil just for periodic maintenance on a fretboard, but since this one is in such rough shape, I'm going to use some Dunlop cleaner and prep for the fretboard, and then we'll follow it up with some of this deep conditioner. I'll let this sit, and depending on how it soaks in, I may finish it off with some lemon oil if it dries out after applying this, but that's what I'm going to do for this one. We'll see how it works. Wow, it actually is starting to look a little bit like rosewood again. Wow, it's starting to bring back the color in the rosewood. Cool. It's going to take a couple applications, I think. This conditioner worked out really well. I think I ended up applying it about 5 times before it stopped soaking right in. It ended up bringing the color back fairly well. Well, now I can string this thing up, tune it up to pitch, well, we got some strings on there. Turns out I did not have any strings in stock, so I had to make a run to the music store to get some strings, but it's tuned up. Now, unfortunately, I cannot really play this thing. The best I can do is kind of, sorta, somewhat play a couple of chords because, well, I gotta do them upside down. What happens when a left-handed guitar player has to play a right-handed guitar? The action actually turned out pretty well. I had to go back and file another fret right here. It seems though there was just a little high spot there. Maybe I missed it when I was checking it with the fret rocker, but had to remove the strings, file that down. But now everything seems to be pretty good. I'm gonna stamp this one done, and we're gonna get this one delivered back to its owner and move on to something else. This one really kind of was a struggle today. Sometimes things that you think are going to go super simple don't always go that simple, and you have to spend a lot more time. Like, I thought literally that I was going to be done with this hours ago. Unfortunately, that has eaten up most of my day, but some projects do that. But I am going to call this one complete. Thank you guys so much for watching. I do appreciate it so much. If you enjoyed it or you found it helpful in any way, go ahead and give it a big old thumbs up. Also, you can subscribe to my channel and ring that notification bell so you get notifications when I post other videos like this one. Thanks a lot, guys, for watching. We'll see you next time.